Okay, well, um, I'd like to take it piecemeal rather than to do it all at once. I mean, first of all, where are we? And I think it's pretty clear from Iran. We've seen, first of all, a new statement from the Supreme National Security Council, which is more or less a restatement of the first 10 principles that were enunciated ahead of the Islamabad talks. But it differed in a number of points. I mean, the language of it was tougher, saying, we're not going to be put up with this sort of, vulgar language and calling us names. So forget it. Uh, and at the same time, there was a change in the secretary of the council, the security, the SNC. The outgoing one actually made that statement, which is quite important. It wasn't the new incoming Mohsen Rezai that made the statement. It was the outgoing one who had been nominated by Pezeshkian. Now he loses his vote on the SNC, and Rezai now has a vote as a representative of the supreme leader. And then there have been a number of military changes at the same time. What I think we're seeing is a very concerted consolidation around a leadership and around a vision. And the vision is one that Iran is not going to look for a solution with this president. Zayi has almost said that outright, that perhaps we'll have to keep the war on till 29. The Hormuz block will be till 29. I don't think that means that they are looking for an all-out war, more that as Trump pivots or has pivoted to sort of moving away from the war towards, as Besen says, economic pressure, we don't have to worry about it. The economic pressure on Iran will be sufficient, and we can go on manipulating the price of oil so that people don't get too fast. In this case, then Iran has said, we will go on attacking ships. And they seem to have got the measure of the game, because on Monday, this last Monday, actually half an hour before market opening, instead of Axios with Barak Ravid saying, oh, a deal is about to come, they targeted a tanker just half an hour before markets to make a point. So they've understood, how the manipulation of markets is being done, and have responded in their own way. So, I mean, I think we're going to go into a situation of extended sort of skirmishing between Iran and the United States, and they're going to put pressure on Trump. And I don't think they intend to negotiate. In fact, they do not intend to negotiate with Trump unless he wants to capitulate completely. So a change there. Now, you wanted to sort of bring it into the region as a whole. I would say that this again, there have been a succession of miscalculations. I mean, the first miscalculation by the United States was that they didn't check their inventories, their weapons inventories properly before starting a war, which you'd think would be one of the, the most obvious things to do. But then again, if you assume the war is only for 4 days, perhaps they thought it didn't matter. But that was a big mistake because they didn't check their inventories. I think the second big mistake is precisely this of pretending, saying, oh, you don't have to worry about oil or the other elements passing either through the Red Sea or there's No, because actually we think a lot more tankers than is understood have been passing through, and we're managing to manipulate the oil price. And Bethan keeps reassuring Trump, don't worry about it. The economic pressure is going to be on Iran, and they'll eventually capitulate, and we can manage the oil price, and we can manage the economy. Like, I think this is another big mistake. I think it's a big mistake because, first of all, uh, the manipulation of oil has actually become a sign of American weakness for the rest of the world. The very obvious management of these prices is not fooling anyone at all any longer. And it's not preparing people for what is coming, because, it's fine for Besant and others to say, well, look, the price, we're managing, it's down to 87 at the moment or whatever. The price means nothing. Forget it. Those nice graphs that we had at university, demand and supply and the equilibrium at the middle where they curve. But actually what counts most of all is the supply curve, because that is about scarcity and about real, if you like, things. And demand is something that is ephemeral and can come and go, but actually real supplies. And we all know that the real supplies, particularly of the middle distillates that make diesel and kerosene, is largely absent. So then they've turned to the idea um, uh, of getting pressure on the Iran by putting pressure on the region, putting pressure on Iran in Lebanon by promoting the scheme to disarm Hezbollah that they hatched up, which runs completely counter to the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU. And they've been doing this by putting pressure on the Hashad, the PMU, the resistance war, if you like, the militia in Iraq that they attacked in recent days. Saudi Arabia and America attacked them during the Arbaeen period, when most Shia were going to Karbala on pilgrimage. And this, too, it's been a succession of really egregious mistakes, because I know I've met the Hashad leaders and I know a little what they're like. I met them in Karbala. And we think of them in the West, or the West categorizes them. Oh, they're just Iranian proxies. No, these switch on, switch off proxies. They don't do what they're told. Couldn't be further from the truth. These people are really adamant Iraqi nationalists, hard nationalists, proud people, tough, but nationalists. And yes, they're Shia. And of course, Iran is the mothership of Shiism in many ways. But that doesn't mean that they just take orders from Iran. There's coordination, but it doesn't mean that they are just sort of robotics in the hands of Iran. And they promised reprisals for the attacks on them, Saudi Arabia. Why Saudi Arabia and America chose to attack them in the first place is a puzzle. Saudi Arabia said it was because they attacked an Aramco refinery, um, uh, but the Hashad strongly deny it, and I've seen no evidence that they were involved with it. Maybe they decided to attack them because Saudi Arabia was anxious not to put the finger on the Houthis in Yemen, because that would mean they would have to escalate against the Houthis, and they are really reluctant to go to war with the Houthis, although now the war in Yemen is coming to Saudi Arabia whether they like it or not. It's there now, and the flames are getting higher almost every day. So um, I think this was an attempt, both in all of the areas, to try and put pressure on Iran. And actually, what it's done is the opposite. It hasn't put pressure on Iran. Actually, it is putting pressure on all of the allies of the United States, like Saudi Arabia. All of these states are actually coming under pressure because the tensions are rising. Um, the atmosphere in the region is getting hotter. I mean, actual flames are taking place in many parts and affecting everyone, including the West Bank. Particularly important what's happening in the West Bank and in Gaza. That is, the bedrock of possible flare-up in the Middle East, which may come at any time. So, in short, all of those things indicate major mistakes having taken place. And so people are not prepared. So I don't think they're prepared for the economic consequences. I mean, it's uncanny, and it's not even mentioned in the Western press at the moment at all. Nothing is mentioned much about it. It's assumed that it's all being managed by Besant with his manipulations of the price. So that's really where we are. Trump has pivoted away from Hegseth, blaming him at Camp David, saying, you misled me about the munitions. I thought this had all been resolved. And he's turned to Besant, and Besant is saying, look, you don't have to worry. Everything is fine. The Iranians will run out of oil very soon, and we just need to keep the blockade, and we will win the war. And I believe this is absolutely a mistake. Iran has positioned enough oil in tankers before the start of the war. It's sold 80 million barrels since. It's continuing to sell and allow traffic to China, for which it will get paid. And so, actually, if anything, it's probably slightly ahead of its budget. I don't think, yes, I mean, economic pressures at some point, but I don't think, well, I mean, we're not talking about anything imminent. We're talking about months, maybe next year, that we would see some pressures. But again, the misreading of Iran, because if Iran gets to a point where its situation becomes existential and they have a choice of capitulation or escalation to a bigger war, they will choose escalation to war, I believe. And that's pretty much confirmed if you look at the choice of the military leaders who've just been appointed by the Supreme Leader.
So what are the options of the United States here, though? Because, as you said, Iran appears to, if not be on the offensive, at least harden its position in terms of both rhetoric and the actions. It doesn't have to wait for American attacks and try to mirror it. It goes, takes the initiative itself. Uh, what can the United States do here? I mean, the options at the table, because it's very hard to read the United States at the moment. You have Trump making these speeches that, well, we already control the Strait of Hormuz and it's wide open. And then you have Scott Bessent arguing, well, the Strait of Hormuz is not really relevant at all. We'll just reroute everything through underground pipes. And it's, yeah, it's it's a little bit like the market manipulation referred to. It sounds like they're only trying to make the whole thing go away with empty talk, but it's not going away, and the situation won't really improve. So, what is the goal here, or what are the possible options? Because if they can't win, if their military option is not convincing, there's no well, path to peace which the U.S. can accept. I mean, I think when they signed the MOU, they didn't really have any intentions to unfreeze the Iranian assets and pay reparations, end all this war. So what is left here? What can the United States do?
I think you hit it the nail on the head exactly. I think that they think that, and Trump has been quite good at it during his career, is to just say reality is not the reality that you see in front of you. This is the reality, and I'm managing it and I'm conducting it. And quite often, that reality, that he proclaims bears no relation to what you know. Like when he says, "Oh well, Hormuz is open. Hormuz is open. We're running a wall of steel around Hormuz." When we know in these days nothing is moving through. And when you look at something like Saudi Arabia, which is ha- has now suffered both ends of its pipeline to Yanbu, the loading area in the Red Sea, have been destroyed. And the Yemenis are putting a siege on the ports at Yanbu, and any Saudi vessels leaving are being threatened and either turning back or some are attacked. And even some commercial shipping of Saudi Arabia has been attacked recently as well, which is going to have a big impact on the Red Sea as a whole, because what that means is, as I understand it, that the insurance companies are now going to go up to war premiums for all shipping in the Red Sea. It's not just going to be one; it's going to have a wider effect. So Saudi production is down by 74%. They can't sell the oil. They need, I mean, oil at $100 to break even with their government budget, and selling the full amount, and they've just collapsed by 74%. At the same time, because of the crisis with Japan, Besant has made it very clear no one's allowed to sell US treasuries. So what does Saudi do if it can't sell its oil and it can't sell its treasuries? I mean, the only thing that can happen is the United States has to bail it out by saying, okay, well, give us your treasuries and we'll give you the money, and we'll swap it back again in a repro attempt at a later date, like they're doing with Japan. The UAE, I do not think, has exported any oil. Liquefied gas is not passing through either. Well, it wouldn't from the Red Sea, but it's not passing through Hormuz. So, I mean, Trump faces more than just one dilemma. It's not just you can sit there and wait to see it all, that Iran gets more under more and more pressure. And Iran has been under pressure for years. It knows how to manage. It's spent decades finding byways and backways and other ways of living, despite all of the sanctions on it. And as I say, if they're faced with that option. But equally, what I think, are going to see, unless we are very fortunate, is an escalation across the region. And I think the most dangerous part of it is going to be in Israel. It's going to be very dangerous in Israel because the elections have become really toxic, and there is a big divide opening out between, if you like, the secular Ashkenazi Europeanized Jews who came in search of sort of safety in in Israel, and the other part, partly messianic, national, religious, um, and they are much more Talmudian in their outlook on hard line, and the two are almost at the point of violence about the future. But what is really concerning is that the right-wing parties, the polling shows that Israelis as a whole are favoring the right by a clear, you can see a clear shift towards the Israeli right. But most of those right-wing parties, the Likud, the National Resistance, and Ben Gvir's party of Israel First, they are not getting the seats. They're not getting seats. I don't know why, and it's not clear why they're not. If the mood is going that way, why are they not in the polls sort of picking up a better position? And so what we hear increasingly from that element, Ben Gvir and Smotrich and others, that what is needed is an intifada in the West Bank, or some action taken concerning Al-Aqsa, Temple Mount, Haram al-Sharif, because that is the way we can win the election. If the electoral balance is moving away from us, we are not going to concede power. And Netanyahu is making all the arrangements so that he doesn't have to concede if he loses the election. He's gerrymandering the system, putting in his places, saying we don't need to obey the Supreme Court and this or that. There's a very strong, we record it all on our Substack for people who are interested in following it because it's very important. And at the moment, the West Bank has already started. Settlers are going in, attacking Palestinian villages. It's very clear that the army is about to go into the refugee camps in West Bank, not in Gaza. They are already doing that in Gaza, but to go into West Bank and to attack the Palestinians there, and to really get back to a sort of 48 type situation in the West Bank where Palestinians leave. And they believe this will mean that this is the path to winning the election. And the election is very fraught, and it's not clear that Netanyahu can win it. He's doing all sort of maneuvers like inventing new parties to sort of to create. The strategic aim is to create circumstances in which no other government can be elected except his. Because, as you recall, if he is no longer prime minister, he may have to go to prison. So the whole region, and if you like, the war between Yemen and Saudi Arabia is certainly heating up. The Houthis have fired missiles at the Saudi-aligned forces in the south, sent them fleeing. Many missiles, big attacks. The Houthis saw a buildup of forces amongst the Saudi-aligned forces in the south that they saw preparing the ground for an attack in the north in Sana'a on the Houthi-controlled territories. So they took action to destroy that buildup and that massing of forces. And as I say, you have the Hashad militia in Iraq promising retaliation against Saudi Arabia. On the borders of Saudi Arabia, Saudi is moving troops to its borders. You have Iran incursing into Iraq to smash the Kurdish, as they see this, Kurdish forces in Iraq, to because there was reports that the Americans were still looking at whether it would be possible to push the Kurds to try and invade into Iran and seize an area as a sort of sovereign state of Kurdistan. Um, we saw the same thing being done by Ukraine in Russia a little time ago, as you recall, as a pressure point. And so the Iranians have come in there, killed many of the leaders, assassinated some of the leaders, destroyed the munitions and the logistics for that. And the Iraqis have also told the Syrians, if they start, as Trump has been suggesting, they do, that they should be involved in Lebanon, and they should be involved in managing Lebanon. Trump has suggested it would be a good idea if Sharia should be involved in managing the disarmament of Hezbollah in Lebanon. The Iraqis are on the Syrian border already, and they say, you move against Lebanon, or we move into Syria. That's the equation there. So all in all, you have a very messy, increasingly heated situation across the Middle East. And far from putting pressure on Iran, it's actually going to put pressure on all the allies like Saudi Arabia, UAE, all the Gulf states will be very anxious at the sudden arousal of Iraqi militancy, of Houthi militancy, and across the region, with the Iranians continuing to threaten and perhaps act to destroy the infrastructure of the Gulf states if America tries to destroy the infrastructure of Iran. Netanyahu is pressing for the United States in these words. I'm quoting, to destroy the infrastructure such that the state is unable to provide services to its people. I've described that as effectively a slow nuclear bomb rather than a fast one, because that's what it would mean, particularly in the middle of summer, with to have no electricity, no water, no facilities. I mean, it would be difficult to maintain the situation at all. So it's a very tense situation, and I think the thing to keep an eye on will be very much to keep an eye on what happens in West Bank. If that explodes, it can set off explosions everywhere. And Hamas is due to be moved, according to Trump's peace plan, into their sort of concentration camps. They don't call it concentration camps, but they're to sort of secure areas and to try and disarm them as well. So altogether, very unsettled area, and one, it looked for a minute as if that was going to be sort of merged into the war between Ukraine and Russia, because Ukrainians fired on a Iranian vessel in the Caspian Sea. And the point here was that just days before it, the Americans attacked Iranian bases in the Caspian for the first time. And then there was the attack on the Iranian vessel in the Caspian. And it looked as if that was about to become a part of this conflict. However, it seems that the Ukrainians have now backed off and sort of apologized and backed away from it. I don't know. Are there people in Washington that are crazy enough to think merging the two wars is a good thing? What do you think? I don't know.
I think the assumption that they would be able to control such a situation is very difficult, and I think that's part of the hubris. They sit and think they have, they can twist some buttons and dials, and they can be able to essentially control how it escalates, where the conflict is fought. I think we're very close to this whole thing going off the rail, not just in Iran, but with the Russians as well. And
Exactly.
and not even just accidentally. I think if I was sitting in Tehran or in Moscow, I would think that giving this escalation control to the Americans, allowing them to decide when the fighting begins, when it ends, where to escalate. That Yeah, this is very dangerous because well, you saw the attacks on Jordan, for example. The Americans immediately said, "Oh, this was a surprise attack," but they're in the middle of a war. Why? The assumption was the Iranians would only mirror the American actions. So the fact that they're not, I mean, you don't want to give that much control to your opponent. And I think the fact that they think they can merge these two wars into one and be complete control, I think that hubris, it's also a mistake for Tehran and Moscow that they gave this to the United States, give it the illusion that they're able to control this. So maybe they should be a bit more unpredictable. Maybe they should go on defensive. But
I think the attack on the restaurant in Moscow recently is very much more serious than people have sort of seen. It comes against the backdrop of Ukraine firing missiles at Russians on the beach in the Black Sea, sitting. You've seen the videos probably with them, everyone in the water swimming and enjoying the sea, and then a missile lands on people, lying on their towels, sunning themselves. And there was another one on a resort hotel. But what I think is different with the, if you like, the bomb, it's one of the big, tall Seven Sisters building in Moscow, which you will know. And, they're set back. They're not in a main thoroughfare or in a sort of populous area. They're sort of, all on their own. But at the base of one of those was this Italian restaurant, and two senior generals, as I understand it, Air Force generals, were taking part in a wedding reception. So the restaurant was closed to the public. And then a woman came bearing purported gift to the wedding party. And she was stopped by security at the door. And obviously, or at least seems logically, the person who was controlling the operation from a safe distance, from a car or something, pressed the button and killed both of them, and injured a lot of people because the package was filled with ball bearings beside explosives. So people on the terrace were damaged. Now, why do I say this is so important? I think it's very important because I do not know this in any way. I have no privileged information, but I would bet anything that the Russians will conclude that a Western intelligence service facilitated this operation, provided the intelligence or provided details about how to identify and how to know that these two generals were at this party. I don't know it's true. It may not be true, but I would think it's a safe assumption on the pattern that we've seen of increasing involvement of in European and Western intelligence services in this field in supporting actions against the civilian population, and these assassinations, that they will be thinking. And I think it could serve as a tipping point. The Russians, I mean, they won't do anything, you know, hurriedly and off the top of and but they will regard this very seriously. And I think they will, there will come a time. How long can the West and particularly Europe go on, firing their missiles into civilian areas. It used to be the refineries and things, but now it's on beaches and on clubs. It's now assassinations of wedding parties in Moscow. At one point, does Russia say, enough? That's it. Where if you don't understand the language, if you haven't taken our warnings seriously enough that we will not put up with this, then we will take harsher action, which will make it clear to you that we will not accept this to continue. So I think it could be a serious inflection point. The mood in Moscow is quite different, much more, I think, again, a different era by Western um, intelligence services. They think that these missiles firing unsettle Russians, make them anxious, make them nervous, make them feel they wish the war was over, make them think that, Putin is to blame and that he needs to go. I think they have this 100% wrong. What it does is make Russians deeply angry and want this to be stopped. And I think we're seeing, the shift in vibe very obviously in the sort of pounding, the pummeling that is taking place in Ukraine. But it may not stop at Ukraine if these actions continue. Is he going to bring about the ceasefire that Trump seems to think? I mean, Rubio just said that. I mean, a couple of days ago, he said very clearly, these missile attacks are a good thing because it'll put pressure on Putin and he'll have to seriously come to the negotiating table. And he didn't say it, but and make a ceasefire, which Russia keeps ruling out. And at the same time, senior Russian officials are saying very clearly, no, no, we're not going to talk to the Americans anymore. We're finished with those negotiations. Effectively, really, they have been saying, and the foreign minister has said, I'm paraphrasing it, but he was saying that actually the Alaska talks were a deceit, closer to the Minsk Accords, to give Ukraine more time, that they were a deceit, and they don't intend to continue these talks. Yes, channels of communication for administrative things will continue with Washington, but no, they are not going to. We're not going to deal with them. They can't be trusted. So, I mean, this is where we are. Iran won't talk with the West. Russia is refusing to talk with the West. And when Rubio tried to tell Wang to stay out of Iran, um, the Chinese foreign minister told him to, in quite clearly abrupt tones, to mind his own business. So, I mean,